desert wind whispered warnings across the dead land of Vion. A young alien girl knelt in the dust, holding her dying spirit creature, begging for a drop of water, while crowds walked past, pretending not to hear. But one man stopped. A human. He gave her the last of his water, and unknowingly awakened a secret that could bring rain to a world that hadn't felt it in 100 years. What he didn't know was that something dark was watching them, and it wanted the spring to stay dry forever. If you're new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. The sun hung like a heavy coin over the dry land of Vion, where the sky shimmered with heat and the ground cracked beneath every step. Towns here were built from dust and forgotten stone, their wells empty, their roofs crumbling. In the middle of the old market square, where traders once shouted and fountains once ran clear, a young alien girl stood alone. Her name was Kima, and her skin was the color of faded ash. Her wide green eyes blinked slowly as she cradled a limp creature in her arms. Small, soft, and glowing faintly blue, its breathing weak, its tongue dry. Beside her, a woven basket held 3 more of these creatures, all silent, all fading. She spoke in a trembling voice, asking for water, for help, for mercy. None stopped. The crowd of aliens passed her by, tall ones with silver spines, others with stone-like skin, some with shimmering cloaks hiding their faces. One muttered, "She has no shadow, cursed thing." Another spat, "Why waste water on dying beasts?" Kima's legs gave out. She dropped to her knees in the dust, tears streaking down her dry cheeks. "Please," she whispered. "They're all I have." That was when someone stopped. A tall figure in a brown coat, dust-covered and tired, paused at the edge of the square, a human. His name was Dre. His face was sunburnt, his beard rough, and his boots cracked from long travel. He had just arrived on Vion, drifting from world to world as a technician, fixing machines no one remembered. He looked at the girl, then at her creatures. Their glow was nearly gone. Without saying a word, he knelt beside her, pulled a metal flask from his belt, and poured the last of his water into his palm. Carefully, he brought it to the nearest creature's mouth. It licked once, then again, its faint light growing just a little stronger. Kima gasped. Her lips trembled. "You stopped," she said. Dre gave her a sip of water too. It was warm, barely enough to ease her throat, but it brought color back to her face. "Why do you help?" she asked. He shrugged. "You looked like you needed someone." She nodded slowly, still holding the creature close. "They are bonded to me," she said. "If they die, I get sick. I get cold inside." Dre looked around. Still, no one paid them any mind. The town had gone, blind to suffering. "Why not go to the shelters?" he asked. "They turn me away," she answered. "They say I carry useless mouths." He didn't speak for a while. Then he opened his bag and handed her a wrapped food tablet. She took it with shaking hands. One of the creatures chirped softly. It was alive, barely. Dre stood. "Where do you stay?" he asked. "Outside the walls," she said, pointing to the horizon. "In the dust fields. It's safer there. For us." He helped her lift the basket, and together they began walking toward the edge of town. As they passed an old broken water station, the wall beside it bore a single phrase scratched deep into stone. "Hope dries last." Kima walked slowly, her steps unsure. "What's your name?" she asked. "Dre," he said. "Yours?" "Kima," she replied. The wind began to pick up, swirling sand around their feet. Behind them, hidden in the cracks of ruined buildings, small eyes watched, silent, unblinking. Dre didn't notice, but one of Kima's creatures did. Its ears perked up, its body tense. Something followed them. Kima looked back but said nothing. The desert knew how to whisper, and tonight it would speak again. The sun dipped lower as Kima and Dre walked into the wasteland beyond the town. the broken wall behind them fading into the dust. The desert stretched endlessly, filled with sharp rocks, old bones, and scattered pieces of metal from machines long forgotten. The wind whistled through the dry canyons like voices calling from the past. Kima moved slowly, careful with each step. The woven basket pressed tightly to her chest. The creatures inside made soft sounds, still weak but alive. Dre walked beside her, his bag heavier now with responsibility, not tools. Every few minutes he looked behind them, feeling a strange pressure on his back, as if someone or something watched them from the dunes. "You feel it too?" Kima said without looking at him. Dre nodded. "Yeah, since we left the market." Kima whispered, "They follow the shadowless." She explained that ever since her birth, she had no shadow. It was taken, she believed, by the old spirits of Vion in exchange for her bond with the creatures. The bonded don't have shadows, she said, because they share them. Dre didn't understand, but he didn't question it. The heat pressed down harder, and their water was gone. Kima pointed to a rocky slope. "We can rest there," she said. They climbed up and found a small cave, half covered in vines that grew without water. Inside, it was cooler, the stone walls etched with symbols, circles, stars, and strange creatures. Dre lit a small solar lamp, its soft blue light revealing a mural on the far wall. It showed beings like Kima, standing with humans, both holding glowing animals in their arms. "You've been here before?" he asked. Kima shook her head. "No, but I've dreamed of this place." They sat in silence, listening to the wind howl past the entrance. The cave felt safe, but only for a moment. Suddenly, one of the creatures in the basket whimpered. Its glow faded, its breathing slowed. Kima cried out softly, holding it to her chest. "This one is called Liru," she whispered. "He's the oldest." Dre moved closer. "What can I do?" Kima's hands trembled. "I need to share my breath with him." She placed her forehead gently against the creatures, closed her eyes, and took slow breaths. Dre watched as a faint shimmer passed between them. Her skin paled, her breath slowed, but Liru's glow brightened. When she opened her eyes, her body swayed. Dre caught her before she fell. "You're killing yourself," he said. Kima shook her head. "We are one." They rested until nightfall, when the sky turned dark purple and two moons rose. Dre helped Kima back onto her feet, carrying the basket now as she leaned on his arm. They left the cave and continued walking. In the distance, lights flickered, remains of an old observatory. Dre had seen it on old maps. They reached it before midnight. The building was cracked and leaning, its roof half collapsed. Inside, strange machines lined the walls, their screens dark but still humming faintly. "What is this place?" Kima asked. "An old skywatcher station," Dre said. "Humans used to study the stars here. They explored a little, finding dusty tools, journals written in faded ink, and broken solar panels. Then Kima stopped in front of a large metal door with a handprint scanner. She placed her hand on it, and to Dre's surprise, the door opened with a hiss. Inside was a small room filled with warmth. A soft light came from a glass orb in the ceiling. In the center stood a single pedestal with a book resting on it. Dre approached and opened the book. It was written in human and alien symbols together. It told a story of unity, of humans and bonded ones standing together to protect Vion. It also warned of a group that rose in fear, the Valor, who hated what they could not understand. They hunted the shadowless, erased the records, poisoned the springs. Dre read aloud, his voice quiet. To find the spring of Cavalis, one must pass through memory, not just land. Kima whispered, "That's where we're going." They took the book and left before sunrise. As they moved away from the observatory, they didn't notice the tracks behind them, deep, clawed footprints in the dust. Something was following, moving faster now. The heat returned quickly. Dre felt dizzy, the weight of the basket heavy, on his arms. Kima was quiet, her steps slowing. "We're being watched," she said suddenly. Dre stopped and scanned the horizon. Nothing, But then he saw it. Movement in the bones of an old creature half buried in the sand. Something crawled, through it long and pale. He pulled Kima behind a rock and whispered, "We need to run." They turned and sprinted toward a ridge, not looking back. The ground cracked under their feet, and behind them a low hiss echoed. When they reached the top, they looked down into a valley covered in bones. Kima gasped. "This is the field of endings," she said. "It's full of protectors who died when the springs dried." Dre's eyes widened. Skulls as large as transport ships lay cracked open, and spines stretched for meters across the dust. Something moved between the bones, too fast to see clearly. They had no choice. They began to cross, each step watched by unseen eyes. The silence pressed on their ears. Even the wind refused to follow them into the valley. And somewhere deep within the bones, a voice whispered without sound. The sky above the bone valley faded into gray as Kima and Dre stepped carefully among the broken skeletons of giant beasts, each bone bleached white by centuries of sun and wind. The air felt heavy, not from heat, but from silence so deep it pressed into their skin. The creatures in Kima's basket whimpered now and then, sensing something ancient in the dust. Dre's boots crunched softly on crushed bones as he kept his eyes on the distant cliffs where Kima said the next gate would be. Ahead of them, a narrow canyon opened like a mouth, its walls high and smooth, carved with strange symbols that pulsed faintly under the twin moons. As they entered the canyon, the wind dropped completely. Every sound, the shuffle of their steps, the soft breath of the bonded creatures, echoed unnaturally off the stone. Kima stopped walking and looked up. "This is the Hall of Still Voices," she whispered. "We are not alone here." Dre frowned. "What do you mean?" But before she could answer, the walls began to glow faint blue, and from them came whispers. Not loud, not frightening, soft and full of memory. They heard laughter, crying, songs in languages they didn't know. The voices didn't belong to people nearby. They came from the stone itself, as if the canyon remembered everyone who had passed through. "This place is alive," Dre said, his hand brushing one of the glowing symbols. Suddenly, a line of light appeared beneath their feet, forming a path that led deeper into the canyon. The bonded creatures perked up and followed it without fear. Kima's face looked pale, her energy still weak from helping Liru. She leaned on Dre, and he kept her steady as they walked. Soon, the canyon opened into a chamber unlike anything Dre had ever seen. The walls were smooth black stone, polished, like mirrors, and in the center stood a round platform surrounded by ancient metal arches. Strange devices hovered above it, unmoving, their lights dim. "This is the testing place," Kima said. "The gate beyond will only open if it accepts. Your heart?" Dre looked at her, confused. "Me?" "Yes," she said. "You brought us this far. It has to be you." The bonded creatures moved back, forming a circle around the platform. Kima guided Dre to the center. When he stepped onto it, the air changed. It grew cold, then warm, then cold again. The stone below him pulsed once, and the metal arches lit up. A deep voice echoed through the hall, not from speakers, but from the very air. "You seek to enter the spring of Kevalis," it said. "To protect life, you must reveal truth. No lies can pass." Dre felt his knees shake. Before he could speak, the chamber around him shifted. The mirrors showed not the room, but memories. His own. He saw Earth, burning cities, the face of his younger brother crying during the evacuation, the explosion that separated them forever. He heard his own voice shouting, the silence after the loss. "You blame yourself," the voice said. "You carry the guilt." Dre closed his eyes. "I do," he said softly. "I left him. I ran." The mirrors shimmered again, now showing Vion, showing Kima's face when he gave her the last of his water. "You stopped," the voice said. "When others passed by." Dre nodded. "I didn't want to, I just couldn't walk away." The air trembled. "Will you give again?" Yes, he said, louder now. Even if it hurts. Even if I'm afraid. The light in the arches grew stronger. The bonded creatures chirped softly. Kima's eyes filled with tears. You passed, she said, stepping forward. The platform lowered, revealing a hidden doorway beneath it. The walls of the hall dimmed, and the voices faded into silence once more. The path ahead glowed golden. Kima looked at Dre. You were weighed and did not break. Dre helped her down the stairs, their steps echoing into the new chamber. It was cooler here. The scent of water hung in the air. Not dust, not decay. Real living water. Ahead, behind a curtain of mist, they saw a tall gate made of stone and vines. A symbol glowed at its center. A drop of water held by two hands. One human, one alien. Kima placed her hand on it, and the gate slowly opened with a low hum. What? Lay beyond shimmered with soft blue light and the promise of something lost but not forgotten. They had reached the edge of the spring, but the journey was not yet over. Deep in the darkness behind them, something stirred, something that hated what they were about to awaken. The gate opened slowly, revealing a wide cavern filled with glowing roots that stretched across the floor and up the walls like veins of light. The air smelled fresh, like wet stone and clean wind, a scent that neither Dre nor Kima had experienced in years. At the center of the chamber stood a deep stone basin, cracked but still shining softly, with drops of water floating above, it pulsing like a heartbeat. Dre stepped forward, drawn by the glow, while Kima stood still, her breath shallow, one arm clutching Liru close. This is the heart, she whispered. The spring of Cavalis. The basin waited, but the water did not flow freely. Something was missing. Before they could move closer, a loud cracking sound echoed from the passage behind them. The stone gate they had entered through shattered inwards, and dust spilled into the chamber. Shapes moved in the smoke. Dark figures, cloaked, in armor made of shadow and steel with long claws and burning eyes. The Veiler had arrived. They carried weapons that hissed with cold energy. Their leader a towering creature with a mask shaped like a broken skull. You cannot awaken the spring, the leader hissed. It belongs to silence. Kima trembled. They followed us, she said. They never stopped. Dre stood between her and the basin, his body tense, heart pounding. He had no weapons left, only the flask that once held his last drops of water. He looked at the basin, then at the attackers, and something inside him rose. A memory of his brother, the scream of helplessness, the day he ran. He would not run again. I came for hope, he said, his voice calm but sharp. You came to kill it. The Veiler stepped forward, raising their weapons. The bonded creatures jumped in front of Kima, growling, their glow now fierce and bright. Liru, weak for so long, stood on shaky legs and let out a sharp cry that echoed off the walls. The air vibrated. The basin pulsed. The chamber began to change. Vines grew from the walls, fast and wild, wrapping around the stone like living armor. The Veiler fired, but the blasts were deflected by the light from the basin. Dre ran to it and placed his flask inside the stone bowl. Instantly, the floating drops gathered around it, turning the flask into a glowing container of life. The basin flashed with blue light, and a shockwave knocked the Veiler back. The spring is awakening, Kima cried, but it needs a vow. Dre turned to her. What kind of vow? The promise of rain, she said, stepping forward despite her pain. You must give it. Dre looked down at the glowing water, then closed his eyes. I vow to never let this water fall into greed. I vow to carry it not for power but for life. I vow to bring it to the forgotten, the weak, the unseen. I vow to remember. The basin glowed brighter, and a deep sound filled the air. Not a voice but something older, like the world itself answering. Light shot from the basin into the sky, through cracks in the mountain, up into the clouds. Outside, the people of Vion looked up as thunder rumbled for the first time in 100 years. The Veiler leader screamed in rage and lunged, but the ground beneath him cracked open. Roots burst from the earth, wrapping around him and dragging him down. The others fled in panic, their shadows retreating. Inside the chamber, the light softened. The basin was now full, clear and calm. Dre held the flask, his hands glowing. He turned to Kima, who was crying silently. "You did it," she said. "You made the sky remember." Dre walked to her and helped her sit. The bonded creatures gathered around, their fur shining, their eyes peaceful. They had survived. Above them, water began to drip from the ceiling, falling on their skin, their hair, their wounds. Rain had begun. They left the chamber through a back tunnel, emerging on a high cliff that overlooked the dust fields. Below, people stood in silence as drops fell from the clouds, wetting the ground, turning dry soil into mud. Children cried out and laughed. Elders raised their hands to the sky. Kima and Dre stood side by side, watching as the world changed. "This is just the beginning," she said. "The water will spread, the land will heal." Dre nodded. "But we'll need to protect it." Behind them, the temple's lights dimmed as if its task was done. The basin would rest now until the next rainmaker came. Dre held the glowing flask tightly. He had become something more than a traveler, more than a technician. He had become a keeper of hope. And as the rain fell harder and the people of Vion began to sing, Dre made one final vow, not out loud, but in his heart. That, as long as he walked this world, the water would never be forgotten again. The journey ahead was long, but it had already begun.